My name is Sarah, and at 35 years old, I finally earned my master's degree. It took me 5 grueling years of night classes while working a demanding full-time job and raising 2 children. I should have been proud, standing on that stage in my cap and gown, the culmination of so much sacrifice. But as I squinted against the bright stadium lights, all I could see were the 5 empty seats in the audience, 5 gaping holes in my heart reserved for the family who never showed. I clutched my diploma, a hollow victory, surrounded by thousands of celebrating graduates, yet I had never felt so completely alone. My achievement, which had cost me everything, apparently meant nothing to them. If you have ever felt completely let down by the very people who were supposed to be your rock, you know the sting I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe, because you've found a community that gets it. Family disappointment, it just cuts deeper than any other pain, and my story is one I think many of you will unfortunately understand. For the past 12 years, I've been married to Mark, a 37-year-old software engineer with a stable, predictable job at a tech company here in Austin, Texas. We have 2 kids together. Leo, our 14-year-old son, is deep in that classic teenage phase where his parents are the most embarrassing people on the planet. And then there's Maya, our bright, bubbly 11-year-old daughter, who is becoming more interested in her social life than anything else. We live in a modest 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, nothing flashy, but it's comfortable. It has a small backyard where the kids can play during those scorching Texas summers. It's a good life. A stable life. But for me, something was missing. I worked at a large marketing firm downtown, a place I'd been employed for nearly 9 years. My job as a marketing analyst was demanding, often requiring 50-plus-hour weeks, especially when a major campaign was launching or when big clients needed quarterly reports. I was good at what I did, I was creative with strategies and patient with difficult clients. I poured my heart into that job. But year after year, I watched as my male colleagues, some with far less experience, got the promotions I was aiming for. They'd get the corner office, the senior title, the significant pay bump that would have really helped our family finances. During my performance reviews, my boss, Mr. Henderson, would say the same thing. "Sarah, you're great, a real asset to the team. A bachelor's degree in marketing is fantastic, but everyone at the senior level has that." He'd lean back in his chair, a picture of corporate authority. If you want to move up to senior management, if you really want to break through that ceiling, you need an MBA. You need more credentials. The first time he said it, I nodded and went back to my desk, determined to work even harder. The second time, a year later, I felt a knot of frustration tighten in my stomach. After the third time, watching a guy half my age who I had personally trained get the promotion I'd been working towards, I made up my mind. I would get that Master of Business Administration. I would get those credentials, no matter what it took. I wasn't just going to be great anymore. I was going to be undeniable. I enrolled in the evening MBA program at the University of Texas. It was designed for working professionals, which meant it would take 5 long years of part-time study. It was a massive financial and time commitment, but I convinced myself, and Mark, that it was a necessary investment in my future, in our future. I thought it was just a degree, a piece of paper that would unlock the next stage of my career. I had no idea that decision would become a 5-year test of endurance, one that would push my marriage, my relationship with my kids, and my own sanity to the absolute breaking point. What I didn't fully anticipate was how absolutely punishing the schedule would be. My life became a relentless cycle of responsibilities, each one demanding a piece of me until I felt like there was nothing left. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., my mind already racing through the day's checklist. I'd tiptoe into the kitchen to start the coffee and pack lunches for the kids, the only sounds being the hum of the refrigerator and my own quiet sighs. Then, it was a full, grueling day at work, staring at spreadsheets and sitting in meetings, trying to conserve enough mental energy for what was to come. 3 evenings a week, from 6 to 9 p.m., I was in class. I'd rush from my office downtown, grabbing a protein bar for dinner in the car, and slide into my seat just as the professor began the lecture. I'd come home completely exhausted around 10 p.m., only to find dishes stacked in the sink and homework that still needed checking. The weekends were no longer for relaxing or family outings. They became my sacred study time. I'd lock myself in our small home office for hours on end, surrounded by textbooks and case studies, while Mark took the kids to their soccer games or to birthday parties. I could hear their laughter through the closed door, a happy, distant sound from a life I was no longer fully a part of. "Mom is always studying," I once overheard Leo complain to his father. "She never has time for us anymore." Those words stung more than any bad grade ever could. They were a sharp, painful reminder of the price of my ambition. But I tried to rationalize it, to push the guilt down. This was temporary. This was for us. Once I had my degree and the promotion that would follow, our family's financial stress would ease. We could finally afford that family vacation to Disney World the kids had been begging for. This sacrifice, I told myself, would be worth it. I just had to hold on. I clung to that idea like a life raft, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing, not from the outside world, but from within my own family, ready to capsize everything I was working so hard to build. My relationship with my family, particularly my brother Kevin, complicated things even further. Kevin is 3 years older than me, 38, and he has always been the golden child. He runs a successful real estate business, lives in a sprawling, ostentatious house on Lake Travis, and, as a bachelor with no children, enjoys the freedom to travel constantly and indulge in expensive hobbies like boating and collecting rare whiskeys. He was the sun, and I was just a planet in his orbit. Our parents, who retired and moved to Florida, never even tried to hide their preference for him. It was a pattern established in childhood. When we were growing up, they attended every single one of his football games, cheering from the sidelines, rain or shine. But they frequently missed my academic competitions or piano recitals, often with a flimsy excuse. "Oh, honey, the traffic will be terrible," my mother would say. As adults, that dynamic only intensified. They would drop everything and fly to Texas to help Kevin renovate his kitchen or landscape his yard. But when I desperately needed someone to watch the kids during my final exams one semester, they suddenly had a non-refundable cruise booked. The double standard was maddening. "You know, your brother is just more fun to be around," my mother once told me, with startling honesty, after I confronted her about the imbalance. "You're always so serious, Sarah, so busy with all your responsibilities." The irony was breathtaking. I was being held in contempt for the very quality, responsibility, that they had supposedly raised me to value. It felt like I was being punished for being a grown-up, for being a mother, for trying to build a stable life for my family. The unspoken rule was clear: Kevin's wants would always be treated as needs, while my needs would be treated as inconveniences. And while this favoritism was a familiar, lifelong ache, I never imagined it would escalate from passive neglect to active sabotage. But that's exactly what was coming. The first real act of sabotage happened about 3 months before one of my most critical final exams. Kevin and my parents were in town, staying at his lake house. He insisted we all come over for dinner. I was in the middle of writing a massive research paper that accounted for 40% of my final grade in a finance class. I told them I couldn't make it, that I was on a tight deadline. But my mother insisted. "Don't be silly, Sarah. You have to eat. Just bring your laptop. You can work at Kevin's." Reluctantly, I agreed. I packed up my laptop and my notes, hoping to find a quiet corner. At his house, I set up my workspace at the far end of his enormous kitchen island. The family was loud, laughing and drinking wine. I put on my headphones and tried to focus. About an hour into my work, Kevin came over, a full mug of black coffee in his hand. He leaned over my shoulder, pretending to be interested in my paper. "Wow, look at all those numbers," he said, his voice dripping with mock admiration. "Looks boring." As he leaned in, he tripped over a bar stool. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the mug tilt in his hand, a dark arc of steaming liquid sailing through the air. It landed directly on my laptop's keyboard. The screen flickered, went black, and then died. A sizzle, a pop, and then silence. 5 weeks of research, my entire 20-page draft, all my notes, gone. I stared in horror. Kevin just laughed it off. "Whoops, clumsy me," he said, grabbing some paper towels. "My bad, sis." "Hey, it's just a school paper, right? You can write it again." My mother rushed over, not to check on me, but to fuss over him. "Oh, Kevin, are you all right? Be careful." I was speechless. The casual cruelty of it all was suffocating. I took the laptop to a repair shop the next day. The technician gave me the bad news: the motherboard was fried. The data on the hard drive was unrecoverable. I had to start from scratch. I spent the next 2 weeks fueled by caffeine and rage, barely sleeping, rewriting the entire paper. I passed the class, but just barely. Mark saw how devastated I was, but even he just sighed and tried to keep the peace. "He didn't mean it, Sarah. It was an accident." But I knew better. As Kevin walked away from my dead laptop that night, I saw the faintest trace of a smirk on his face. It was a look of pure satisfaction. And that's when I knew this wasn't just lifelong favoritism. This was something darker. This was a warning shot. He had shown me he was willing to actively undermine my success, and I was terrified to see what he would do next. Despite the undercurrent of tension, I pushed forward. As my graduation day approached, it became my North Star. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was a symbol of my perseverance. It was the finish line of a 5-year marathon, and I wanted my family to be there to see me cross it. 6 months before the end of my program, I started planning meticulously. The university sent an email with all the details, including the fact that each graduate would receive a limited number of guest tickets. I immediately requested the maximum allocation of 6, 1 for Mark, 1 for Leo, 1 for Maya, and 1 each for my mom, my dad, and my sister, Melissa, who lived in Denver. I called my parents in Florida to give them the date, May 15th. I heard my mom scribbling it down on her calendar. "We'll try our best to make it, sweetie," she said, her voice laced with a familiar, noncommittal tone that suggested she was already weighing it against other, more fun possibilities. Still, I chose to be optimistic. This was my master's degree graduation. Surely, they would prioritize it. Next, I called my sister, Melissa. Unlike our parents, she seemed genuinely thrilled for me. "I am so proud of you, sis," she gushed. "Working full-time, raising kids, and getting a master's degree? You're superwoman. I'll book my flight next week." Her enthusiasm was a balm to my anxious heart. With family attendance seemingly secured, I turned my attention to the celebration. I researched restaurants near the university and found a highly rated Italian place called La Stella that could accommodate our party. It was expensive, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. I put down the non-refundable deposit without hesitation. Since my parents would be traveling from out of state, I also used my hard-earned credit card points to book them a nice room at the Marriott downtown. Everything was falling into place. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of pure, unadulterated excitement about my own life. Can you believe the nerve of what's coming next? I poured my heart and soul into planning this one perfect day, a day to celebrate something I had worked so hard for. I want you to stick with me here, because what happens next is the part that truly broke my heart. This is where a simple phone call turns into a calculated act of cruelty. 3 weeks before graduation, the first real hint of trouble appeared. My phone rang, and it was Kevin. He rarely called unless he wanted something, so I answered with a sense of dread. After asking a few perfunctory questions about my studies, he dropped the bombshell. "By the way," he said casually, "I'm throwing a massive party at my place on May 15th. I just bought a brand new ski boat, and I'm having a big christening party to break it in. You guys should come. The kids would love the pool." My stomach dropped. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Kevin," I said, my voice tight. "That's my graduation day. I told everyone months ago." There was a pause on the line. "Oh, right. I forgot about that. Can you change your party to another weekend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking with a mixture of hope and fury. "Not really," he replied, sounding completely unconcerned. "I've already invited like 50 people. I've got big clients from Dallas who are only in town that weekend. It's a huge networking opportunity." He then added, with breathtaking dismissiveness, "But hey, when does your ceremony end? Maybe you can stop by afterward." My blood pressure skyrocketed. "The ceremony is at 2 p.m. and it will probably go until 5. Then we have dinner reservations." "But that's not the point, Kevin. My family is supposed to be at my graduation." "Come on, Sarah," he said, using that same condescending tone he'd perfected since childhood. "It's just a graduation. You already had one for your bachelor's degree. This is just a piece of paper saying you took some extra classes. My party is a real event. Just a piece of paper." 5 years of sleepless nights, missed bedtimes, and constant stress, all reduced to just a piece of paper. Before I could formulate a response that wasn't dripping with profanity, he delivered the final blow. "Look, Mom and Dad are coming to my party. They already confirmed. They're really excited to see the new boat." Now I was truly seeing red. "You told Mom and Dad about your party and invited them, even though you knew my graduation was coming up?" "I didn't realize it was such a big deal," he said defensively. "You're 35, not 22. It's not like this is your first rodeo." I hung up the phone, shaking. I immediately called my mother, praying she would see reason. Her response was infuriating. "Oh dear, what bad timing. It's just so difficult, your father is so looking forward to seeing Kevin's new boat." The conversation went downhill from there, with her suggesting I was being selfish. I tearfully recounted the conversation to Mark, expecting him to be my rock, my furious defender. Instead, he just patted my hand and said, "Hey, your family has always been like this. Don't let them get to you. At least you'll have us there. Me and the kids will be your fan club." He promised. He swore they wouldn't miss it for the world. Those words, that hollow promise, would soon become the most bitter lie of all. In the weeks leading up to the graduation, my carefully constructed fortress of optimism began to crumble, brick by brick. First, my sister Melissa called from Denver, her voice thick with genuine regret. Her youngest had come down with a bad case of the flu, and she couldn't risk traveling. I understood completely, of course, but it was another pillar of support knocked away. Then, I received a formal, almost corporate-sounding email from my parents, officially confirming they would be attending Kevin's event instead of my graduation. They promised to take me to a celebratory dinner the next time they were in town, as if a meal could replace their presence on one of the most significant days of my life. I read the email once, deleted it, and didn't reply. The silence was my only response. Still, I clung to Mark's promise. "At least I still have you three," I said to him the night before the ceremony, my voice small. "That's what really matters." He nodded distractedly, his eyes glued to his phone. I noticed he'd been texting a lot that day, a little more secretive than usual, but I brushed it off as work stress. I should have known better. The bombshell that would shatter my last remaining hope came not from a text, but from a phone call. It was my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister who lived about an hour from Austin. "Sarah, honey, I'm just calling to check what time we should expect the kids tomorrow," she said cheerfully. Kevin said he was setting up some games for all the children, and Mark mentioned to him that Leo and Maya were so excited about the new jet skis. I nearly dropped the pot of pasta I was draining in the sink. The hot steam felt cold against my suddenly clammy skin. "What? What are you talking about, Aunt Carol?" "The kids are coming to my graduation with Mark." Oh, she sounded confused. That's funny. Mark definitely gave Kevin the impression he was bringing them to the party. He said the kids would have much more fun there than sitting through a long, boring ceremony. My hands were shaking as I set the pot down. I looked across the kitchen at Mark, who was suddenly intensely focused on chopping vegetables, his back to me. "Aunt Carol, I have to go," I said abruptly, and ended the call. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, thick with unspoken betrayal. I finally broke it, my voice dangerously quiet. "Nathan. Why does my aunt think you and the kids are going to Kevin's party tomorrow?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just kept chopping, the rhythmic thud of the knife hitting the cutting board like a countdown to an explosion. I might have mentioned to Kevin that the kids were asking about the party," he mumbled. "They heard about the pool and the jet skis from their cousins." "And you told him you were bringing them," I stated. It wasn't a question. "Without discussing it with me first." He finally looked up, his expression a toxic mixture of guilt and defiance. "Sarah, be reasonable. The ceremony is going to be 3 hours of sitting quietly while hundreds of names are called. The kids will be bored out of their minds. So instead of teaching them about supporting their mother, about celebrating a major life achievement that was done for their benefit, you're teaching them that fun always comes first?" My voice was rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. "This graduation represents 5 years of me sacrificing time with them to build a better future for our family. Don't you think it's important for them to see that hard work pays off?" He sighed, that heavy, put-upon sigh I had come to despise. "Of course, I do. But the kids really want to go to the party. Leo's been talking nonstop about swimming with his cousins, and Maya heard that her friend from soccer will be there. Kevin invited her whole family." "So, what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew the sickening answer. "That you want to take our children to a party instead of watching their mother graduate with honors after 5 years of hell?" "Can't we compromise?" he suggested, his tone infuriatingly reasonable, as if we were negotiating a business deal. "Maybe I take the kids to the party for a couple of hours, and we meet you at the restaurant afterward to celebrate. Or I could come to the ceremony alone." I stared at him in disbelief. "Do you hear yourself? This isn't about compromise. This is about being there for me, for one day, on one of the most important days of my life." "You're being dramatic, Sarah," he muttered, turning back to his vegetables. "Dramatic." The word hit me like a slap. 5 years, Mark, I said, my voice trembling now. 5 years of missing bedtimes. Of studying until 2 in the morning. Of using every single vacation day for exams instead of family trips. 5 years of you complaining about my absence, of the kids feeling neglected, of me carrying a mountain of guilt on top of pure exhaustion. And now that it's finally over, now that I want one day, just one single day of recognition and support, you're all too busy with a lake party? "The kids should be able to decide for themselves," he countered, a weak and cowardly defense. "They're 14 and 11. I shot back. "Of course, they'd choose a pool party over a graduation ceremony. That's why parents are supposed to make decisions based on values, not on what's more fun." The argument escalated from there, our raised voices drawing the kids downstairs. When they realized what we were fighting about, they predictably sided with their father. Leo declared that only nerds care about graduation, and Maya tearfully asked why I wanted to ruin their fun. I was outnumbered in my own home. I went to bed that night without eating, too heartbroken to stomach food. Mark slept on the couch. As I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the beautiful navy blue dress I'd bought for the occasion hung in the corner of the room like a ghost, a symbol of a celebration that would never happen. I had thought the lowest I could feel was being abandoned by my parents and brother. But I was wrong. The deepest betrayals always come from the ones sleeping under your own roof. I woke up on graduation day feeling disoriented after just a few hours of restless, dream-filled sleep. For a fleeting moment, I forgot the previous night's argument, and my mind automatically shifted into a state of excitement. It's here. The day is finally here. Then, reality crashed back in like a tidal wave. I reached across the bed to find Mark's side empty and cold. He hadn't come back to the room. Dragging myself to the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my puffy, swollen eyes and tried to summon some shred of enthusiasm. This was still my day. This was still my achievement. I wouldn't let their absence, their choice, ruin it completely. Downstairs, the house was eerily quiet. No sounds of breakfast being made, no Saturday morning cartoons on the TV, no bickering children. The silence was heavier than any argument. On the kitchen counter, where I usually left loving notes in their lunchboxes, sat a single piece of paper with a hastily scrawled message. Took the kids to Kevin's early to help set up. Good luck today. Congrats. Mark. Not even a proper goodbye. Not even an I'm sorry. Just an afterthought. The note felt like a physical blow. I crumpled it in my fist, the paper crackling in protest, and threw it in the trash. Then, with trembling hands, I made myself a cup of coffee. The clock read 9:30 a.m. My hair appointment was at 10 o'clock, followed by makeup at 11 o'clock. The ceremony began at 2 p.m., with graduates required to arrive by 1 o'clock. I was a robot on autopilot, following a schedule for a life that no longer felt like my own. The hairstylist commented on my subdued mood but professionally avoided prying. The makeup artist did her best to conceal my swollen eyes and pale complexion, creating a polished mask that contrasted sharply with the turmoil raging inside me. Back home, I carefully put on my new navy blue dress. I straightened the cap on my newly styled hair and zipped up the black graduation gown. I took a selfie in the full-length mirror, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It felt like playing dress-up for a party no one was coming to. I posted it to social media with a generic caption about achieving goals. Out of habit, or perhaps a little bit of spite, I tagged my husband, my brother, and my parents. The congratulatory comments began to roll in immediately. Coworkers, distant relatives, old high school friends, all expressing pride and excitement. A chorus of support from the periphery of my life, and a deafening silence from its center. I texted Mark one last time before leaving the house. I'm heading to the ceremony now. Are you still planning to come? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. A minute later, his reply came. Ethan took a bad fall while running around the pool. Nothing serious, but lots of tears. Might be late. Save us seats if you can. I didn't bother responding. It was another flimsy excuse. He knew seats weren't assigned for families. He had read the information packet I'd left prominently on the kitchen counter for weeks. He wasn't running late. He wasn't coming. The drive to the university was a blur. I parked in the crowded garage and made my way to the auditorium where the graduates were gathering. All around me, fellow students were surrounded by their families. They were posing for photos, receiving flowers and hugs, their faces beaming with shared joy. I kept my head down, focusing only on finding my place in the alphabetical lineup, my name tag feeling like a brand. The procession into the main hall began, the traditional pomp and circumstance sounding more like a funeral dirge to my ears. I was part of an ocean of identical black gowns and square caps, a sea of anonymity. From my seat on the stage, I scanned the vast audience, irrationally hoping to spot Mark and the kids slipping in late, a last-minute change of heart. But there was nothing. Just a sea of strangers' faces. The ceremony began with speeches from the university president and the dean. They spoke about perseverance, about overcoming obstacles, about the importance of a support system. Every word felt like it was directed specifically at me, a cruel joke from the universe. When my department, the Masters of Business Administration, was called, I rose with my row and waited for my name. In those few moments of anticipation, waiting to walk across that stage, I made a decision. I would not let them take this from me. I had earned this. I had paid for it with my time, my sleep, and my tears. This moment was mine. Sarah Marie Williams, Master of Business Administration, with honors. I walked across the stage with my head held high. I shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma case, and moved the tassel on my cap from right to left. There was polite applause, the same anonymous recognition for every other graduate. No distinctive cheers, no special whistles, no one calling my name. Just the sound of strangers witnessing a stranger's milestone. After returning to my seat, I felt oddly calm. The hurt was still there, but it had crystallized into something harder, something that felt like resolve. When the ceremony finally ended, graduates flooded the lawn outside for the traditional cap-tossing and photos. I stood awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, watching families reunite, watching champagne bottles pop, watching fathers lift their graduate daughters into the air with pride. I checked my phone obsessively. No messages from Mark. No calls from the kids. Nothing. I scrolled through social media, a masochistic impulse taking over. And then I saw it. A new post from my brother, Kevin. It was a photo of his new boat, with my parents, Mark, Leo, and Maya all smiling, gathered around, raising glasses in a toast. They looked so happy. So carefree. The timestamp showed it had been posted 30 minutes ago, right in the middle of my graduation ceremony. Something inside me broke then. A dam of emotions I had been holding back all day burst. I found a quiet corner behind the science building, leaned against the cold brick wall, and let myself cry. Ugly, heaving sobs that smeared my carefully applied makeup and left me gasping for breath. When I finally composed myself, I decided to cancel the restaurant reservation. There was no point. As I pulled up the restaurant's number on my phone, a text message appeared from a number I didn't recognize at first. It was my husband. "Sarah, call me. It's an emergency." My blood ran cold. I looked at my call log. In my emotional state after the ceremony, I hadn't even checked it. My heart stopped. 45 missed calls from Mark. All within the past hour. 45 missed calls could only mean one thing. I called him back, my hand shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. He answered on the first ring. "Alicia, thank God," he said, his voice high-pitched with panic. "What happened?" I demanded, already running toward the parking garage. "Is everyone okay?" "It's Ethan," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It's the boat, he fell. We're at Memorial Hospital." "I'll be right there," I said, my voice strained, breaking into a clumsy run in my dress shoes and graduation gown. The carefully constructed resolve I'd built over the past few hours shattered into a million pieces, replaced by pure, primal fear. "Is he in a lot of pain?" "How bad is it?" "They gave him something for the pain, but he's pretty shaken up," Mark said, his voice cracking. And then he added the words that sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me, a clash of maternal instinct and bitter resentment. "He keeps asking for you, Sarah. He just keeps asking for his mom." Now he was asking for me. Suddenly, my presence was essential. I drove to the hospital in a state of heightened anxiety, my mind a war zone. I was terrified for Leo, my sweet boy, but I was also seething with a white-hot anger at the entire situation. My beautiful navy blue dress felt like a costume. The graduation gown lay crumpled in the passenger seat, the cap tossed carelessly in the back. My diploma case, the symbol of my 5-year struggle, sat unopened on the dashboard, a forgotten relic. Memorial Hospital was only 15 minutes from campus, but the drive felt interminable. I found a spot in the emergency lot and rushed inside, my carefully styled hair now falling loose around my shoulders. The ER was a controlled chaos of Saturday afternoon injuries. I gave Leo's name at the reception desk and was directed to Bay 7. I pushed back the thin, sterile curtain and the scene before me stopped me in my tracks. Leo lay on the gurney, his right arm encased in a temporary splint, his face pale and tear-stained, but calm. And around him stood my entire family. Not just Mark and a frightened-looking Maya, but my parents, who were supposed to be in Florida, and my brother Kevin, all huddled together, their expressions ranging from relief to guilt to something that looked uncomfortably like pity. They all turned to look at me as I entered, a ghost from a celebration they had all willingly missed. "Mom," Leo called out, his voice small and childlike, a sound that sliced through my anger and went straight to my heart. "You came." I moved immediately to his side, my maternal instinct overriding everything else. "Of course I came, sweetheart. How are you feeling? What happened?" As I smoothed his hair back from his forehead, the doctor approached. He introduced himself as Dr. Ramirez and explained that Leo had a simple fracture of the radius. "Painful, but straightforward," he said, pointing to the X-ray. "We'll put a cast on it, and he should heal completely in about 6 weeks." Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. A broken arm. It was serious, but manageable. Not life-threatening. "He was very brave," my mother interjected, patting Leo's leg as if to claim some credit for his courage. "Barely cried at all after the initial shock." I acknowledged her with a tight smile but couldn't bring myself to engage. The fact that they were all here, a united front of concern gathered around my injured son when they couldn't be bothered to attend my graduation, felt like salt being ground into a very fresh, very deep wound. Kevin stepped forward, a practiced look of contrition on his face. "Thank God you got here, sis. The little man has been asking for you non-stop." Something in his casual tone, the ease with which he acted as if this were just a normal family gathering rather than the disastrous culmination of a profound betrayal, snapped what little composure I had left. "Thank God I got here," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "As opposed to where I was before? Graduating. Alone. While my entire family, my husband, my children, my parents, were enjoying a party." An uncomfortable silence fell over the small, curtained space. Mark shot me a warning look, his eyes silently pleading with me, "Not here, not now." But 5 years of suppressed exhaustion, frustration, and hurt had reached its boiling point. I was done being quiet. "I just spent the most important day of my professional life completely and utterly alone," I continued, my voice trembling but clear, each word aimed like an arrow. "No husband. No children. No parents. Not even a single text message of congratulations, because a new boat and a lake party were more important than 5 years of my sacrifice and my hard work." "Sarah," my father began, his tone placating, "this is hardly the time or place." "When would be a better time, Dad?" I challenged, tears threatening again. "When I'm back to being invisible? When I'm back to being the responsible one who never gets acknowledged? When I'm back to putting every single one of you first, while none of you can spare a single afternoon for me?" Then, Kevin, ever the self-centered antagonist, tried to deflect and gaslight me. "See? This is exactly why you should have been with the family in the first place," he said with an arrogant shrug. "These things happen. If you weren't off at some boring ceremony, you would have been there." The sheer audacity of his statement took my breath away. "This thing happened at a party you threw, Kevin. A party you scheduled on my graduation day on purpose, to overshadow the proudest day of my life. You are the reason I wasn't there." My mother looked genuinely bewildered, a testament to her profound self-absorption. "Honey, we didn't realize it meant this much to you. It's just a ceremony." "Just a ceremony," I repeated hollowly, the words like ash in my mouth. "Just like it's just a degree. Just an accomplishment. Just my life." The silence that followed was heavy with guilt. It was the only answer I needed. I looked at my son, Leo, who was watching the adult drama unfold with wide, anxious eyes. And Maya, standing beside him, was nervously chewing on her lip. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of decades of adult resentment. "You're right," I conceded, taking a deep, shaky breath and turning my back on the adults. "Leo needs us to focus on him right now." I turned my full attention back to my son, my voice instantly softening. I asked him about the doctor's exam, making sure he understood what would happen next with the casting process. I kept my voice steady and reassuring, compartmentalizing my own pain, as mothers have done for centuries. As the nurse came to take Leo for casting, I walked with them. As we went down the hallway, Leo leaned his head against my arm. "I'm sorry I missed your graduation, Mom," he said softly. "I really wanted to go to the party, and Dad said it would be okay." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's not your fault, sweetie. Adults made those decisions, not you." "But you're sad," he stated, a simple, painful truth. "Yes," I admitted, seeing no point in lying. "I am sad. But I'm also very proud of myself. And I hope someday you'll understand why today was important." He nodded solemnly, his young face contemplative. "I'm proud of you too, Mom. Even if I didn't see you get your diploma thing." His simple words, his genuine recognition, were the first I had received all day. And coming from him, they meant more than any applause, any party, any hollow apology ever could. After Leo's arm was neatly encased in a bright blue cast, we returned to the ER bay. As we walked down the hallway, my mother, trying to reclaim some sense of control and normalcy, said, "Well, we'll all come back to your house now. You'll need help getting him settled, and we can figure out dinner." This was the moment. This was the crossroads. The old Sarah, the people-pleasing, conflict-avoidant Sarah, would have sighed and agreed, swallowing her pain for the sake of keeping the peace. But the woman standing in that hospital hallway, the woman who had walked across a stage alone, who had cried behind a science building, who had just found her voice, was different. I stopped walking. I turned to face my mother, my father, and my brother. I looked at Mark. And I said the word I had been holding back for my entire adult life. No. The word hung in the sterile air, sharp and final. They all stared at me, stunned into silence. "Thank you, but no," I continued, my voice calm and firm, surprising even myself with its forcefulness. "My friend Chloe is already on her way over with dinner. And I am perfectly capable of taking care of my own son. You all can go back to your party. I'm sure the barbecue is still going." "But we came all this way," my father protested, genuinely bewildered. "We were planning to stay until tomorrow." "You came all this way for Kevin's party," I corrected him coolly. "You are free to go back to it. I need some space right now." My mother looked genuinely hurt, her lower lip trembling slightly. For a split second, the old guilt flickered within me. But I extinguished it. For once, I refused to accommodate her feelings at the expense of my own. We parted awkwardly in the hospital parking lot. There were mumbled promises to call and check on Leo, but the damage was done. The chasm between us was too wide to be bridged by a simple phone call. I drove our car home, with Mark in the passenger seat, silent and ashamed. Leo was carefully secured in the back, and Maya was unusually quiet beside her brother. The tension in the car was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. At home, I helped Leo get comfortable on the living room couch with pillows propping up his new cast and his favorite TV show playing. Sophia, sensing the storm between her parents, retreated to her room. Mark hovered uncertainly in the doorway, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. "I'm going to change," I said, gesturing to my graduation outfit, which now felt like a costume from a failed performance. "Then we need to talk." Upstairs, I peeled off the navy blue dress. I washed the smeared makeup from my face, scrubbing until my skin was raw, as if I could wash away the day's humiliation. I put on my most comfortable clothes and took several deep breaths, gathering my strength before returning downstairs to face my husband. He looked up when I entered the kitchen. "Sarah, I know you're angry," he began. "Angry doesn't begin to cover it, Mark," I replied, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. "I feel betrayed. By you, most of all." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I made a mistake. I screwed up. I didn't realize how important the ceremony was to you." "How?" I asked, the question laced with disbelief. How could you not realize? I've been talking about it for months. I have been living and breathing this degree for 5 years. I specifically asked you to promise me you would be there. I know, and I'm sorry, he said, running a hand through his hair. When Kevin invited us, the kids got so excited, and it just seemed like a harmless compromise at the time. A compromise implies both parties agree, I said bitterly. You made a unilateral decision to prioritize a party over supporting me. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was my friend and coworker, Chloe. She hadn't just brought dinner as promised, she also had a graduation gift, a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with my initials and a card signed by our entire department. We are so proud of you, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. You worked so incredibly hard for this. Her simple, genuine acknowledgement brought fresh tears to my eyes. This was it. This was all I had wanted from my family. This basic recognition of my effort. After Chloe left, I sat with Mark at the kitchen table. What do you want me to do? He asked, his voice laced with desperation. How do I fix this? I don't know if you can fix it immediately, I said slowly. I need time. I need space to think about what this means for us, for our marriage. I took a deep breath. I'm going to stay at the hotel I booked for my parents. Just for a week. I need to clear my head. A week? Sarah, be reasonable. Leo has a broken arm. He needs his mother. Leo has a father, I replied sharply, who is apparently perfectly capable of taking him to a lake party without consulting me. He will be fine for a few days with you in charge. You need to step up. I need to step back. I checked into the downtown Marriott that night, into the very room I had reserved for my parents. The irony was not lost on me. As I settled into the quiet, sterile space, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. For the first time in over a decade, I had put my own needs first. And the guilt I had expected to feel was surprisingly absent, replaced by a newfound, unfamiliar, and deeply welcome sense of self-respect. That week in the hotel was one of the most transformative of my life. The initial silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the constant noise and demands of my daily life. But as the days passed, the silence became peaceful. It became clarity. I had time to think, to process, to feel my anger and my hurt without the constant pressure to forgive prematurely for the sake of family harmony. The apologetic texts and calls came in a flurry. My parents left a tearful voicemail, admitting they had been thoughtless and selfish. Derek sent an elaborate, ridiculously expensive flower arrangement to the hotel with a card acknowledging his insensitivity. I appreciated the gestures, but I knew that real change required more than flowers and voicemails. Mark called every single evening, his tone shifting from frustrated to desperate as he realized I was serious about this time apart. He was forced to juggle work, the house, and 2 kids, one with a broken arm, on his own, and for the first time, he was getting a small taste of the immense mental and physical load I had been carrying for years. During that week, I wasn't idle. I visited Leo every day after work, bringing him small gifts and helping him adapt to one-armed living. I had lunch with Maya at her school, reassuring her that family challenges were normal and that my needing space wasn't her fault. I met with my boss, Mr. Henderson, and officially accepted the senior marketing analyst position, which came with a significant salary increase and, symbolically, a private office with a door I could close. When I finally drove home a week later, I wasn't the same woman who had left. I was calmer, stronger, and I knew exactly what I needed. Mark was waiting for me on the front porch. The house was surprisingly clean, and I later learned he'd hired a cleaning service, a small but meaningful acknowledgement of the domestic labor I typically shouldered. We sat at the kitchen table, the scene of so many rushed breakfasts and homework sessions. I have been thinking a lot about us, he began, his voice sincere. About how I've taken you for granted. About how I failed to support you when it mattered most. I've been thinking, too, I said, meeting his gaze. About what I need from this marriage going forward. I need respect for my accomplishments, not just lip service. I need a true partner who values my goals as much as his own. I need to stop being the default parent, the default housekeeper, the one whose professional and personal needs always come last in our family's financial and emotional budget. He didn't get defensive. He just nodded. You deserve all of that. I see now how I've been putting you last. It was unfair and hypocritical. We talked for hours, more honestly than we had in years. We made practical plans, a shared family calendar for chores and appointments, a budget for hiring occasional help, and a commitment to weekly check-in meetings to ensure neither of us was carrying the entire load. Over the next few weeks, I had similarly forthright conversations with my parents and Kevin, individually. I didn't yell, I simply stated the facts of my experience and established clear boundaries. I told them that their approval was not something I would exhaust myself trying to earn anymore, especially when it was given so freely to my brother. The weeks that followed brought gradual healing. My promotion came through, and the extra income eased our financial burden significantly. Mark followed through on his promises. And perhaps the most meaningful gesture came a month after my chaotic graduation day. Kevin organized a small surprise party. It wasn't a huge, flashy event. It was an intimate gathering at a quiet restaurant with my close friends, Chloe, and my immediate family. He'd ordered a cake decorated with my university's colors. At the dinner, he stood up and gave a short, heartfelt speech, acknowledging my determination and intelligence. My parents were there, and they presented me with a gift, a beautifully framed professional photograph of me in my graduation regalia that they had commissioned from the university's photographer. It was a lovely evening, but its significance went beyond the celebration itself. It represented a shift, a recognition that my milestones deserved the same attention and respect as anyone else's. As I prepared to hang my diploma in my new office, I reflected on the unexpected journey. What should have been a simple celebration had instead become a catalyst for profound change. The empty seats at my graduation had initially felt like rejection, but they had ultimately forced me to find my own voice and demand my own value. I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by who showed up to applaud, but by my own sense of accomplishment and integrity. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your family to protect your own peace and self-worth? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience could be the one thing that helps someone else feel less alone. Thank you for listening to my journey. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating family dynamics and finding your voice. Remember, your achievements deserve celebration, even if, sometimes, you have to be your own biggest cheerleader.